Two prominent local businessmen are killed in a helicopter crash in Pennsylvania. What we know about the crash and the questions investigators are working to answer tonight.
I'm still in shock. I really don't know how to react.
Hear from Western New Yorkers who are reeling from the sudden death of these local businessmen. We'll take a look at their impact on the community.
Keeping a close eye on the additional soaking rain that we'll be dealing with for tonight on into the weekend, plus room for some freezing drizzle. We'll have the latest coming up.
You're watching News 4, your local news leader. Now, live from Buffalo, this is News 4 at 5.
The community mourns the loss of two prominent Western New Yorkers after a helicopter crash in central Pennsylvania last night. 58-year-old Mark Croce and 63-year-old Michael Capriato died in the crash. Croce was a well-known developer here in Buffalo. Capriato was an Orchard Park businessman. And we have team coverage of this tragedy.
News 4's Dave Graber and Chris Servatas will have reaction from local leaders. But first, we're going to turn to George Rickert, who has the latest on the investigation into this tragic crash. George?
Well, Don, the cause is still unknown, and it is not likely to be the weather. We know that Mark Croce was piloting that chopper, which was owned by his company when it went down literally in someone's backyard near Harrisburg.
Just sounded like a helicopter was flying right over cat-a-corner from our house. You heard the propellers, and then you heard a popping sound, and then there was absolutely nothing.
It was about 8:30 last night when the chopper came down in a residential neighborhood in Silver Spring Township outside of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
By the time we got the windows open, there was no fire. It was just rubble in the backyard. And it landed almost, dead center in the yard. It didn't hit the trees. Somehow didn't hit the house at all, didn't hit the fence. Just kind of a pile over here.
Mark Croce is a licensed helicopter pilot who is flying a Robinson R-66 helicopter like this with a Rolls-Royce engine. It was owned by Croce's company, Red Mark Capital. Croce left Buffalo just after noon Thursday and landed at Bay Bridge Airport on Kent Island, Maryland, just after 2 p.m. A man at that airport tells News 4 Croce asked him if they had jet fuel, but they did not, so he indicated he may go to Martin State Airport in Baltimore later. Then, just before 7 p.m., Croce landed at Martin State Airport for about an hour before taking off at 7:59 p.m. According to a website called FlightWare24.com, his flight path indicated he was headed toward Harrisburg Airport. But about 30 minutes after he took off from Baltimore, he crashed outside of Harrisburg.
We all of a sudden heard loud sound of the helicopter rotors going overhead spinning, and engine sounded like it was in distress. All of a sudden a loud clang, and then silence, and a couple seconds later a really loud thump. And I turned to my wife right away and I said, "That's a helicopter, it's gone down."
Now, we don't know what the purpose of their trip was. The National Transportation Safety Board has not yet determined the cause of this crash. George Rickert, News 4.
And we are continuing our team coverage here in Buffalo as the people who knew both Mark Croce and Michael Capriato are remembering these men. Dave Graber spoke to people close to the victims. Dave.
Well, Jackie, Mark Croce and Michael Capriato, both from Orchard Park, are leaving behind lasting impacts on their respective communities. Croce in Buffalo and Capriato in the Village. Their footprints are vast professionally as business owners, developers, board members. But when you talk to some of the people who knew them best, they are just as vast personally.
I think right now I'm still in shock. We spoke day before yesterday. He was out flying, and I'm just still in shock. Mark is my boss, but he's also a very good friend.
Connor Hawkins has worked alongside developer Mark Croce for more than 18 years. He helped manage properties like the Curtis Hotel, a Croce crown jewel for redevelopment, just like so many other properties throughout the Queen City, like the Statler, Buffalo Chop House, and Dinosaur Barbecue.
We talked about, hey, let's go do something somewhere warm. But his love was downtown Buffalo. That was it. He would never want to do anything anywhere else.
Croce's passenger Thursday was Michael Capriato, whose passion was the Village of Orchard Park. Capriato was a former village trustee, a longtime owner of this Quickfill, typically run by his son John, and an electric bicycle shop. He was instrumental in building the village's Veterans Memorial. and he was president of the Woodlawn Cemetery for nearly 20 years. Neil Heinen's known Capriato for even longer than that.
I'm still in shock.
He'll remember Capriato for his dedication to the village, a work ethic he'll honor by doing the job his friend gave him.
I really don't know how to react. Right now is just come to work. This is where Michael would expect me to be. So this is where I am. That's what my priority has to be.
Why?
Because it's my job.
And it's your job because of Mike.
Yep, and I said that I would never want to disappoint him when I took this position. And I'd like to think that I haven't.
Well, in each case, the lives of these men have left some of the people closest to them with a feeling of obligation. Croce's business partner and Capriato's close friends say that they will maintain business as usual, or try to, because that's what each would have wanted. Live in the studio tonight, Dave Graber, News 4 at 5.
Few developers saw a diamond in the rough in downtown Buffalo the way Mark Croce did. He made aggressive plans for several buildings in the neighborhood, including the Statler. News 4's Chris Cervantes is there live right now. Chris?
Don, now this building is home to events, receptions, and of course that popular lobby bar. But it was not that long ago that it was in a state of disrepair, even at risk of being torn down. City officials credit Mark Croce as the man who stepped in to save it. March 16th, 2011, Mark Croce officially acquires the old Hotel Statler building in Niagara Square.
If I get involved in a project, I stick with it, and I lay up at night thinking about ways of recreating energies and synergies.
Much of the building was in ruins at the time. City officials feared a costly $15 million demolition of the historic landmark. But thanks in part to millions of dollars in public grant money, it was saved. And it was Croce who received the credit.
I think that this is a beacon of light of the revival of what happens when people who believe in the community, when people who see the challenges but come forward.
We need to attack it this summer.
Most recently, Croce was planning a $3 million facelift to the exterior of the building's first 2 stories. He won Preservation Board approval in June. The building represents just one example of Croce's development ambition. In a statement released by his company, Buffalo Development Corporation, his former co-workers said, "We want to assure the employees and the public that business will continue without interruption."
Mark was a visionary.
State Assemblywoman Crystal Peoples-Stokes' district covers part of downtown Buffalo. She was a friend of Croce's.
How do we fill the void? I think Mark's legacy says that the void can easily be filled. Because of where he came from and what he was able to accomplish speaks volumes about what other people can do with that same sort of vigor and vision. And I believe that vigor and vision will carry on even though he's not here anymore.
Now, that statement from Buffalo Development Corporation went on to say that they plan on having a more in-depth conversation about Croce's impact here in the city of Buffalo. But understandably, they said that's not going to happen until a more appropriate time. Reporting live in downtown Buffalo, Chris Cervantes, News 4.
And we will have more on this developing story coming up on News 4 at 5:30 and 6. To see our full coverage, go to the website, WIVB.com.
And let's take a live look over Buffalo in western New York right now as we're getting ready for a stormy weekend. High winds and flooding are expected to cause a big mess in parts of the area this weekend.
Our chief meteorologist, Todd Santos, has been preparing us for this. Todd?
Yeah, and it's a tricky forecast. There are a lot of moving parts, so here goes at least with the first part of it. For tonight and tomorrow, it's mostly rain chances. And then we're not talking about even that much in the way of heavy rain initially. It will pick up, especially during the daytime tomorrow. Right now, we are finding some fog. A lot of areas have dealt with some on and off rain through a good stretch of the day. There's a look at the radar just over the last hour, and there are still a few pockets here and there where we're dealing with some showers, especially down across McKean and Potter County, far southern Allegheny. If I zoom out, the more I zoom out, the more you get the picture of how much rain is heading our direction. So notice this flood watch doesn't go into effect until 1 p.m. Saturday and continues into Sunday. Between now and 1 p.m. Saturday, we'll deal with some of these on and off showers at times, especially across our western counties and closer toward, say, Lake Erie. zoom out a little bit because this system has a lot of other things going on. The more I zoom out, the more I could talk about off to our south and west. But the one piece you can see here, even without using weather models, look at basically that train of rain that's going all the way back down through Indianapolis, southern Illinois, and that's basically pushing up toward western New York. So that's what's going to continue rolling our direction tonight, tomorrow, and tomorrow night. That's kind of the easier part of this whole thing. Most of the cold air is still bottled up well to our north and northwest. So if I were to play this for tonight, yeah, we'll deal with a few more showers. Early morning prior to sunrise, may get a little burst of rain up around Buffalo, and then some breaks through, say, mid and late morning tomorrow. We'll take a closer look at the rest of this coming up, and I will say, once you get past noontime tomorrow, that rain coverage really expands quite a bit more. So remember, we were talking on the order of 1.5 to 2.5 inches worth of rain. This is all we've seen so far. So we are going to add to these numbers quite a bit as far as the weekend's concerned. 47 right now in Buffalo, 44 in Wellsville. We'll basically see temperatures holding in the 40s overnight, but they'll slowly creep upwards. So fog will be less of an issue during the early morning hours. We'll take a close look at the rest of the weekend that includes high wind watch and even some lakeshore flood potential as well coming up. Don, Jackie.
Thank you, Todd. Coming up later, the latest on the articles of impeachment, how lawmakers plan to move forward with the Senate trial.
And the truck light plant in Faulkner will be closing. Here are the company's plans for that facility.
You're watching News 4 at 5 with Don Postles, Jackie Walker, Chief Meteorologist Todd Santos, and Sports Director Josh Reed.
Monday on News 4 Wake Up, the push for affordable